Did you see earlier's episode with Tom? If not, here's Tom.
I was there. Hey, Miggy, thank you for joining everyone.
Right?
Like, you have a very special guest on this episode of Cannabis Legalization News.
Oh.
Don't forget to smash some likes and click subscribe because Miggy has got the real scoop.
Hi, Mary Jane. Oh, that's me. ASMR right there, buddy.
Well, most of our viewers can speak cannabis. And so as a result, you can always tell that it is flowering season and we've made it almost to Croptober. I have a nice one from Purple City Genetics that one's ready to trim up and then another one's, we're going to let it go for a bit. It's starting to like flop over. I'm like, let it go for just a little more. Let's just see how much yield you can get on this.
Yeah, that's the thing. I'm not getting any more yield on this. This Survivor, this.
Oh no, that looks like middle flower. You have like 3 weeks. I want you to tune in from 3 weeks from now on. We might actually start doing the show on Sunday. We might have to like flip them up because Lauren may be busy on Wednesdays at that time period, but she might be free on Sundays, you know?
Yeah. Lauren's got a real job.
Hey,
good on her.
We all have real jobs except for me.
Right.
Shout out to Collateral Base. Still a real job.
You got the true job. I mean, you got the dream job. You're as an entrepreneur type thing.
Well, you know, you have to. I've been gilding the lily too much of being an entrepreneur and an activist, as opposed to just take the money and then deliver a substantially performed product. I guess
that's the thing about activism, though. It doesn't pay. Like, you know, I've been doing this thing for over 20 years, volunteering for HempFest for the past, I think, 10. And then, you know, a lot of your outspoken people with a big followings or whatever, they're not making a business out of trying to change the law. They're just trying to change the law so they don't have to go to jail and other people don't have to go to jail, you know. But yeah, I mean, I think we're further than we were 2 years ago, man. You know.
Well, we didn't exist 2 years ago. And, you know, for those of you that are joining us, thanks, because we're going to have Name That Strain later. And Miggy, I want your stuff to be it in a few weeks. I think you still have like a month. I think you're not going to be taking that sucker down for like another 3 or 4 weeks.
You think? Because I was actually giving him a chopping it just because it's getting cold out here in the Northwest. No.
You let it chop after it's well, I mean, like you could bring it in at night.
I mean, I could do that. Plus, I'm also worried about thieves now as I get more into it.
Oh, right. As she's getting chunky, you would worry about thieves.
Yeah.
You live in such a more dense place where I live in the cornfield. I wouldn't do what you're doing because think of the children. Like I would have been reported to the principal by now. Like if I was doing it, but like in the basement, I have a nice farm set up in the basement.
Well, the children are eyeballing my plant going, God damn, it looks good. So I got to bring
Thanks. Thanks for helping us find our plants.
Well, thanks, old man, for leaving this around. But I don't know. Yeah, I think I'll keep her in here and maybe give her some sunshine from the natural light from this corner because we're getting less daylight. Like today, it seemed like it's freaking 6 o'clock in the afternoon all day. Like all day, it's been just dark and overcast, which I love, like, you know, dark and dreary stuff. But hey, how about that? The passing of the MORE Act at the House Judiciary Committee.
House Judiciary Committee has done it again. I love how they do this.
Did you see how like this was a 2-day event that they had their meeting? Did you pay attention at all? Were you looking at it?
Well, not really, because I figured it was a done deal. When this happens, it's just like, of course, it's almost what they call perfunctory. Perfunctory, a fancy word that means, yeah, we just did that.
Well, and it did. And then, you know, it made headlines, of course, as far as like the whole like Congress is gonna, and I hate that freaking generic headline where it's always like Congress is gonna pass the MORE Act again,
in a perfunctory way, carried out with a minimum of effort or reflection. It's like, yeah, we did that again. We did that again. Hey, can we pass the MORE Act for the 5th time? You know it. Here you go, MORE Act. No problem. Can the Senate do anything?
The MORE Act has passed more times than Trump has lost. I'm just saying.
Hang on, man. We just got like 7 thumbs down for that simply because people cannot accept math. You know, math is like the #1 impediment on like the Illinois cannabis lottery.
it ain't even about math, and it's not about like Republican, Democrat. It's just that right now the predominant idiots in America are wear little red hats that say MAG on it. In my opinion,
Oh,
like
no.
I'm just
No. People have powered interest, and I don't care what political persuasion you are. There's your agenda, and there's your people, and there's your donors, and you're doing everything you can to take care of them.
I know, but as an American, and I think as a writer and activist, and my angle I've been coming out of is I embrace everybody. Like I know shit legit will embrace the MAGA people, but a lot of them believe in some really weird shit where I wouldn't want you at my barbecue. But you know, at the same time, uh, uh, you want to sit down and watch this with me real quick?
Yeah. I just want to say, like, if anyone wants to give Miggy shouts out, don't forget to email him at 420binary at 420 at gmail.com and do the subject of CLN.
Hit me up.
Miggy, I didn't mean to share your email, but I just saw it in the hopper on our scrollers, and I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, I guess it's okay with them.
No, yeah, no, that's why. And then if you click to the website, Cannabis Legalization News website, it'll go straight there too. That's the one I checked. But hopefully you guys can hear this. So this is the introduction.
Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2000.
So again, this is my point being about how we don't have nice things all the time. People wonder like, why isn't marijuana legalized yet? Why can't somebody just write a law down and just get it done? Like why? Because the parliamentary procedure is a long and convoluted process where this is just the House side, right? We still got to go through the Senate side, and then after the House and Senate both vote on it, which most people don't understand, then it will go on to Biden's desk. It's a layered process where I used to make fun of people in student council, dude. Like I never thought about like that being important. Like why is this important? You know what? Those are the kids who are making the fucking rules now.
This is all about power. And so, like, power is all about procedure and litigation and what the law says and what you can get away with. Money, that's something else.
Hey, David, I don't think you're a bumbling buffoon. Oh, no, I mean, not, whoops, wrong one. David Motes is saying, easy bumbling buffoon in here, there now. Like, not all MAGA people are going to be like, yo, I'm just saying, have you seen those conventions? But anyways, let's go back to this.
Hey, do you know what the liquidity requirements are in Ohio for cannabis licenses?
100,000.
It is 250 liquid for a dispo in Ohio. Makes better recognize. Yeah.
Well, and
250
again,
large dispo Ohio money.
That's crazy, dude. That you need 250 just to play the game. Like you don't need
put
that
in an application. Like
exactly.
You'd have to be able to prove that.
But like, you know how we make the comparison about starting a restaurant and you just can't open a lemonade stand or whatever. Like that 250,000 requirement is a hell of a freaking prerequisite for most people, I think.
You serious or ain't you?
Bro, right. I mean, I get it. It's still not,
but it's really gonna be so easy to hack the Ohio lottery. I just need the right pool of financial wherewithal that's already put in the applications, and one piece of real estate that has 100 of those applications on top of it.
Oh, yeah. Well. The real estate game is important when it comes to this process. It will be, right? Even when it's federally legal.
No, because the assignment of the licenses would already be over. So when it's federally legal,
okay, yeah, good point.
It's gonna be liquor stores.
Yeah, no, good point.
For purposes of markup and move the committee report the bill.
Oh, another thing I wanted to point out about like the whole headlines in Congress, passing the MORE Act again. This whole session for the House Judiciary was just a markup for different bills, individual bills. And so this is a markup, for the safe for the MORE Act. And wait till you hear what the markup is, like the initial and original intention that does passes
favorably to the House. The clerk will report the bill.
HR 3617 to decriminalize and deschedule cannabis to provide for reinvestment.
Without objection, the bill is considered as read and open for amendment at any point. I will begin by recognizing myself in an opening statement. I am proud to have introduced HR 3617, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or the MORE Act, joined by my colleagues, Representatives Barbara Lee, Earl Blumenauer, Nydia Velasquez, Sheila Jackson Lee, and Hakeem Jeffries, as well as many colleagues on this committee who have signed on as co-sponsors. This long overdue and historic legislation would reverse failed federal policies criminalizing marijuana. It would also take steps to address the heavy toll this policy has taken
So first they address the bill, what it is, what they're going to do, and then they're going to address the markup.
Across the country, particularly among
I still
communities.
would like to suggest that if
I've
you look
long
up
believed that
perfunctory in the
restricting
dictionary,
marijuana has
you
been a
find
mistake.
this hearing.
Racially disparate enforcement of the marijuana laws
Or circle jerk.
has only made it worse, with serious consequences,
Nah, man.
particularly for communities of color. This issue is not new to Congress. There have been many members who have introduced bills upon which provisions in this bill are based. For instance, Representative Barbara Lee has championed many measures reflecting policies in the MORE Act, and I applaud her longstanding leadership on this issue. Representative Earl Blumenauer has also been an indefatigable advocate.
Indefatigable to describe Earl Blumenthal.
Thank him as well.
Appropriate.
Last Congress,
Shout
the
out
House
to him.
an
Hear that New
overwhelmingly
York accent.
bipartisan manner to address this issue. Unfortunately, the Senate failed to act. So today we are moving forward again. Without any further delay, we need to reform these unjust laws. The MORE Act would make 3 important changes.
You know, another part that, like somebody just pointed out, acting with indifference, showing little or interest care, perfunctory. But it seems like as he's talking, it's very, very dry. Very. I'm reading from like to me. This is
Perfunctory.
yeah, but like to me, this is like yes, let's pass this so we can actually have something happen for everybody at once, equally. And he's just
There's no
Yeah, I
such
just-
thing as the equal, man. It doesn't matter. It's all about not being equal. Like some people get a lot, some people get not. That's it. Treat people
Right.
differently based on how they look.
just God forbid we all have a chance, but just the way he's reading this, it just kills me. Like, what's going on? But let's get back into this then. Let's see. Can you add it back in? Because I can't.
Where did you want to go from?
Oh, I'm about to push play. I just need to add the. There we go.
Changes to federal law.
See, when you take it off, I can't put
One,
it back in.
remove marijuana or cannabis from the list of federally controlled substances.
Yes.
2, authorize the provision of resources funded by a federal tax on marijuana sales to address the needs of communities that have been seriously impacted by the war on drugs,
There's your favorite word, tax.
including increasing the participation of communities of color in the burgeoning cannabis market. 3, provide for the expungement of federal marijuana convictions and arrests. Whatever one's views are on the use of marijuana for recreational and medicinal use, the policy of arrests, prosecution, and incarceration at
Tim.
the federal level has proven unwise and unjust.
And again,
The
injustice.
MORE Act would address some of
Injustice.
the negative impacts. For example, it would establish an opportunity trust fund within the Treasury Department to fund federal programs to support communities at
I like to point out too, before they get into the arguments, because they're about to get into some, as is the debate builds. Whoops! Hey, we both did at the same time.
All right, you do it this time, so it doesn't have
Okay.
to like get
all
done
good.
by me.
And I think I'm figuring out the settings here. But
No, it's all right. I'm just going to screw with you more.
oh, there we go.
Screw with you on
So-
purpose. On purpose.
I just it kills me because they're talking about the funding, right, and how it's going to create this new fund for the industry. But if you think about it, if you think about the money being spent now for law enforcement, incarceration, CPS, a DEA, the amount of money that's being diverted to that stuff,
Yep.
and then you legalize it, you don't have to put that money in it anymore. You don't have to. Yeah.
But then it just
Saying.
becomes like who gets the licenses and how many of them are there. And then Adler said it. It's the minority communities. They were the ones that are most impacted by the war. They were the ones that had everything taken from them. And then like during the war, or right before, no, it was during it because it was like 37. Welcome to the 85th year of the drug war. It was the policy of our country. If there was black people on the mortgages, you couldn't make it with a bank loan. And so like it was, if you wanted a federally subsidized mortgage and there was black people involved, you wouldn't get it.
Yeah. Well, we still
It's
have
messed
sundown
up.
towns. I mean, that's the thing, right? People want to be like, oh, well, but war on drugs is now equally, we're all fucked, which we are. Like we're all equally. It's a war on class.
We're
pretty
not
much.
all equally fucked because then there's
Well-
discretion and prosecution and all this other stuff. And so like, some people are more fucked than others. Just like now, some people are more equal than others when the licenses are being awarded.
Yeah. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like with the fact that we still have sundown towns, right? And if people aren't familiar with that, those are towns that are historically known not to be of a certain shade of color at all. When that sun goes down in that town, that just look it up. It's a very sad part of our history, but prohibition's part of that, right? It was based off of first
Yeah,
control.
it was controlling about other people, not you.
Yeah.
And then by the time the 70s rolled around, it became people that like would have man buns like this. And it's like, oh, that person probably is a vegetarian. Yes. Sometimes I'll eat something though.
But yeah, I mean, you're right though. Like, but how we're so different, right? Like, you can grow legally in your state. I can grow semi-legally. Like, I'm not a patient, but it's legal on my outside. Like the store-bought weed, which is weird. It's just, and then, or you go to Kentucky or Tennessee, you might as well be in 1930.
Man, Kentucky and Tennessee. I'm gonna have to get back into some of those. But then it just, the open markets can sometimes be more fraud ridden. And then the limited markets could be more bribe or like corruption ridden. And so like, if you allow just to be an open market like a Michigan or Oklahoma, you're going to get fraudsters that are going to be having licenses and are going to just be like fucking up deals and other crap. Sorry about the getting blue there. But then if you have more limited market states, then you have it coming in from the political areas where it's like these people have influence and they want that and they're important,
Right. But it's just something that has created an imbalance constantly amongst law enforcement and consumer, right? All this bullshit stories that people say like, oh, we're not after just the one mom, soccer mom smoking weed. Well, where did the soccer mom get her weed? Let's be real about the things that we're mad about. But let's continue on. I'm sorry about the diversion.
Adversely impacted by the war on drugs. These programs would provide services to individuals, including job training, reentry services, and entrance and substance abuse disorder substance use disorder services, and would provide funds for loans to assist small businesses that are owned or controlled by socially and economically disadvantaged individuals. Our bill would also provide resources for programs that minimize barriers to marijuana licensing and employment for individuals adversely impacted by the war on drugs. The collateral consequences of a conviction for marijuana possession, or even just for an arrest, can be devastating. For individuals with a criminal record, it can be difficult or impossible to vote, to obtain educational loans, to get a job, to maintain a professional license, to secure housing,
That
to
just
receive
changed too,
government
by the way.
assistance, or even to adopt a child. These exclusions create an often permanent second-class status for millions of Americans. Another important provision of the MORE Act recognizes this injustice and addresses these harmful effects by expunging and sealing federal convictions and arrests for marijuana offenses. In my view, criminal penalties for marijuana offenses and the resulting collateral consequences are unjust and harmful to our society. The MORE Act comprehensively addresses this injustice, and I urge all my colleagues to support this bill today. I now recognize the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan, for his opening statement.
All right, take a breath because Jordan's about to speak. I mean, all right, here we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This bill not only decriminalizes and legalizes marijuana, but it creates a stimulus program for the marijuana industry. Our constituents are worried about their families, their jobs, their small businesses, and their communities. One thing I can tell you they're not worried about is creating a new program to help provide stimulus.
See, this knucklehead with the stimulus. I was talking about the money being diverted and creating the new infrastructure.
He's derivative. He's derisive. I mean, like, he's not even saying that a cannabis business is a business. He's saying like there's all these great small businesses, and then they're supposed to be drug dealers. And like, it's just
exactly
this guy.
It's just
Stimulus to the cannabis industry. We have a security and humanitarian crisis on our southern border that is only exacerbated by Biden.
we don't. This is fear mongering about the bullshit. Like, if we could just end prohibition, this would help every freaking American. Like, I don't understand why the stalemate on this issue still.
Administration's incompetence and indifference. We all saw a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that has brought
Again,
over 60,000 Afghans
bullshit topics
evacuees
that
the
don't
United
pertain
States,
to the
some of whom
MORE Act
allegedly assaulted
and
their
helping
spouse,
Americans
children, and
now.
even a female U.S. service member. As Democrats have embraced the mantra of defund the police, violent crime is on the rise in major.
This is
urban
also
centers.
perfunctory. This is the most perfunctory
Yes.
Republican
Last month,
display
the
I've seen.
FBI removed the uniform crime
Well,
report
that's what I'm
for
saying. This is
2020.
your
It
guys,
revealed
like
that
I don't.
It's a
homicides in
record.
I'm not.
2023
Like,
I'm not
spiked
anti-Republican.
but it's a
50% from
But we
record.
got
Like the way that America behaves. America behaves as a
2020 homicides
corporation,
marked the
man.
largest
And
single
so,
increase in
like, they are doing the corporate business right there. He's reading into the record. His was recognized by the floor. It's being recorded in the minutes. Just like corporations make decisions, they have records. America really is at its core just a big corporation. And let me tell you, it's way better of a way to do things than like a tyrant or a king or whatever the
But-
juxtaposition between those are. I mean, like, that guy that tries to, say that he runs China and he does a very good job of it, or the guy that runs Russia also does a very good job of saying that he can do that. They don't have to worry about like procedure and how that stuff works. Oh my gosh.
Thanks,
Shout out to
Medical.
Georgia Medical Cannabis Society. And then shout out to all of our members.
We had another member join earlier too while we are in queue. I'm gonna see if
No
I can find
way.
him real quick. Yeah, dude.
Holy
Ooh,
crap. But it's
420.
420, man. So this one goes out to all
It's-
of our members. And I'm
it's like
trying
eating
to
bacon in
find
front
the
of a pig.
420. There it goes.
Thanks a lot, dude, for joining us. And you know, like you're saying though, man, as far as like the perfunctory of it all, like the redundant
Just
talk,
reading it into like you're making corporate minutes,
Yeah. But and again, there's no validation to what these things are being said. You know, we got people in the comments, when I mention the border, people are like, whoa,
That's the trigger point, and they know it, and they're doing it on purpose.
what does that mean though? Is it like America's constantly been like this? Like, how do we go from the beacon to like now, sorry, nobody's home. I'm turning
Or
off the
like,
lights.
how come we're so entitled and somebody's supposed to back a dump truck of money up to my door because I am special?
Well,
Like,
and then
when did we get there? When was it that goes like, we left the old country? Why? Well, the potatoes went bad, and then we were all dying. And that's when the English came at us. And then you get back to America, and it's like, fuck you, get over there. You're like, oh, but now we have our second Catholic president.
But even like with taxes too, when we talk about taxes, right? It's like, okay, America's thirsty for taxes or whatever, the politicians. But
Totally
yet
thirsty.
we talk about taxing people who make over 400K more. Like
Yep.
a majority of people make under, like, I'm sorry, if I made 400K, I would be willing to contribute. Like I have people in my family that make well above, and they're like, you know what? I'm cool with being taxed more. But since it doesn't happen, I'm not going to go out of my way to do you. You know what I mean? But let's just go back and watch this knucklehead. Let's see if I can do this. Wait.
Yeah.
Nope, wrong one. There we go. There, I figured it out.
Administration's incompetence and indifference. We all saw a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that has brought over 60,000 Afghan evacuees to the United States, some of whom allegedly assaulted their spouse, children, and even a female U.S. service member.
These guys are funny too about the whole Afghanistan thing. I mean, like they never served, yet they're going to be mad now after we pulled out. Military is a messy business. I'm telling you, I was there.
Expediency. This is again, they are doing the business of the corporation that is the United States. And that's all he's doing. And he represents an interest, and their interest has a message, and that message is being recorded into the record.
And this is also the same day I can look away while kids are getting messed with.
As Democrats have embraced the mantra of defund the police, violent crime is on the rise in major urban centers. On
And
Monday,
what are cops going to do? What are cops
this
going to
past
do?
Monday, the
Let me
FBI
say,
released its
I'm tired of this
uniform crime
bullshit,
report
like
for
crying
2020.
about the defund the police thing. Because you know what? Cops don't prevent crime. I just don't get it. Like,
Well, it'd be
They're-
great
they're-
if the cops didn't have to like all of a sudden invent crime in the sense that there's a plant that now makes it really easy for people to be able to arrest and search. It's like, I smell something funny, bro. That's wrong. That is wrong. And I'm glad that we are now here, but we're more in the past than we've ever been. Today is more like today than it's ever been. I can't believe that we're going to hear, stuff on the Supreme Court next year that's going to be about abortion, the Second Amendment, immigration, like the same stuff we've heard for decades. Nothing changes. It's a political
Nothing.
thing. It's how people see the world. It's who they are. They haven't changed between 2021 and 021,
And then I think that's the hard part too. Like I realized, like in my younger days, I was an asshole. So like, if you know me when I was younger, my bad. But like, and I still am. We all are. But we try to be better than we were, and that's the
I'm
whole.
kind of impressed with Ohio. They require you to have parking at the dispensary.
What?
Good on you, Ohio. But
you're
no,
going through
later on, I can do something on the regulations on Ohio. They have quotas, and then they have some very interesting legislation. It's like, they just put black in the legislation. Cool.
Interesting. Well, yeah, we'll cover that one later. But let's watch back to Mr. Jim Jordan.
It revealed that homicide in 2020 increased nearly
Unfortunately, it's part of the process.
30% from
And again,
last
the
year.
parliamentary process. We have to
Excuse
sit
me,
through
from
each
the year
other's
before.
bullshit. And this
The
is
2020
why
jump in homicides
a lot of
marked the
things get
largest
passed by
single
people.
increase that the FBI has seen since it began collecting data in the 60s. But are we here today to discuss solutions to these pressing issues? The fact that crime is up, that inflation's at record levels.
And you know what's part of that crime? Prohibition.
Nope. Are we meeting to fix the border crisis or to turn around the Biden economy or
Get rid of
stop the
prohibition,
violent
you get rid
assault
of
on law
good portion
enforcement?
of
No,
crime.
we're here today to discuss a bill to subsidize pot.
I'm not a smart
We
man.
should be
but
working on important issues to help our
Subsidizing pot should be at the forefront of the nation's interests. Subsidizing
Exactly.
pot would get us off plastics. It would get us off of petrochemicals. It would get us off a lot of the pharmaceutical chemicals. It would also allow us to actually make things in the United States. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine we made things in the United States because we would actually subsidize pot, the cannabis industry, where you could now create the science so that the textiles and the plastics and all these things, the fuels could be made from the plant. The batteries could be made from the carbon that the plant is so good at making. The graphite.
So Rick missed our beginning as we talked about how this is like the 5th time the House Judiciary is passing this, and just wanted to acknowledge his thank you for your $5.
The gang is recycling its trash, man. We are doing the same show we did 2 years ago, and it passed, and it passed again.
You know, that's what we need. We need like the edits from like the past shows that we've done. Every time we fucking like, oh, here we go again.
Here we go again. Speaking of here we go again, though, because this guy is such a downer. Seriously, it's just such a downer. Instead of doing that, can we play Name That Strain?
All right.
And let's just play some Name That Strain real quick. Well, actually, let Jim Jordan play. Let's just put him in the background, like a cold, sad piano.
Oh, wrong one. Hey, wait. I don't know how it'll work like that, though.
Add it. You hit play.
Okay.
Basic safeguards against marijuana abuse. The bill provides no limits on or requirements to clearly identify the potency of the marijuana or its extract.
I still hear it.
Concentrates.
Oh, okay.
It's playing like a sad thing. And that's why we're going to play something way less sad.
This bill fails to impose a minimum age limit.
That is way less sad.
That's hysterical, dude. I had to pause it though, because there's a point he's talking about the brain game, and then I just think it's another one that we need to talk about. But look at that beauty.
Brain game. This one comes from Turbo in Wasilla, Alaska. And so get your Name That Strain in. I think saying Alaska and Wasilla and Turbo's hint enough. So it is nice red. It was called Red. And it really reminded me of the stuff that I would get in college, but not necessarily. I mean, like it was it's more of a legacy profile.
Oh, we got some, but that's not the full name.
They don't got to have a full name yet.
Well, there's a couple
that coming in,
getting half of it, but not the original.
Oh, yeah. This it's gonna get more technical than this. It's more technical.
Oh.
Ah, there it is. Matanuska, Thunderfuck.
Thank you, Bob, for joining.
And so, yes, Bob Stanford, thank you. Big shout outs for becoming a YouTube member. And, that's really how we are able to do any type of real growth with this, because we're not allowed to advertise. As you may know, we can't
monetize. Yeah.
You can monetize, but the only way you can really monetize is because of the members. Shout out to the members and shout out to MTF. Let me see if I can go over here and then try to zoom in on the MTFs. Matanuska Thunderfuck, aka Humble Warrior, is a sativa marijuana strain, since many marijuana strains hail from the tropics. It's no surprise that the Alaskan hybrid's name celebrates its origins. Matanuska Valley grasslands, the flowers in these plants develop a frosty icing of hairs that are reminiscent of snowy homeland. Despite its rugged roots, the plants do best indoors and will still yield an outdoors. They'll remain squat in size, but tend to have very large leaves. Smells a little bit like hot chocolate with fruit, and the latter of can dominate the taste. Matanuska's effects tend to come on slowly and give it a strong body buzz, and so it goes by the less colorful name Matanuska tundra in Canada. And so it is also one of the origins of the creeper weed.
Didn't know that. Nice. And then
And that's why you tune in to Cannabis Legalization News.
Oh, dude,
Because no other podcast, and we're on all the podcast channels, by the way, so you can go to any particular podcast channel you want and find us and take us with you in the car.
Yeah, not just podcast, but the YouTube and then the Facebook channel. And we try to spread our content out sometimes so we don't get taken down, which happens because we're associated with that notorious cannabis. But craziness. Chris was asking about like this, and so just for people catching in right now, this does pass. I'm just going over we're just going over like the actual debate and the parliamentary procedure and how it goes down. Georgia, thank you again for another 5. Thank you so much.
Georgia needs some better laws for their cannabis stuff.
Georgia's on my mind now. Thank you guys. So let's get back into this wacky guy while
Creating a
Tom
new
takes a
program
break.
to help provide stimulus to the cannabis industry.
So you just got done
We have a
bitching about
security and
stimulus.
humanitarian crisis on our southern border that is only exacerbated by Biden administration's incompetence and indifference. We all saw a botched withdrawal from Afghanistan that has brought over 60,000 Afghan evacuees to the United States, some of whom allegedly assaulted their spouse, children, and even a female U.S. service member. As Democrats have embraced
like he says
mantra
the same
of
shit
defund
over and
police,
over.
Violent crime is on the rise in major urban centers. On Monday, this past Monday, the FBI released its uniform crime report for 2020. It revealed that homicides in 2020 increased nearly 30% from last year.
It's all bullshit.
So did
Cops don't
opioid
stop
deaths.
homicide. Yeah,
So did
2020
opioid deaths.
homicides marked
But
the largest
prohibition,
single
any
increase that the
prohibition
FBI
could
seen
help
since it began
chill the fuck out of the
collecting
world.
data in the 60s. But are we here today to discuss solutions to these pressing issues? The fact that crime is up, that inflation's at record levels, that the border's in a crisis? Nope. Are we meeting to fix the border crisis or to turn around the Biden economy or stop the far left assault on
And
law?
again about the border.
I like how the
crisis,
Biden economy needs to be turned around.
But like the border crisis bullshit. Like you realize, I don't think a lot of people don't realize like the drugs that come across the border are only because of the American appetite. It has, if we were to legalize things and give people ways to like safe access, the crisis would die down 10-1. I think. I believe.
Going back to the Ohio rules, because the Ohio rules are just like if you guys are not getting into the Ohio Dispo round that's going on right now, you should. So shout out to Ohio Dispo round people that have
Michael's in
$250,000 in. Nice. $250,000 that has to be liquid. You have to be able to convert that to cash within 30 days, and that demonstrates your financial wherewithal for one Ohio medical dispo. Oh shit, I probably just got us canned. I said prices and math. I should never do that. I'm sorry.
Well, you didn't say prices of the plant. You were just saying prices of entry, industry entry fee. So that seems to be more like a licensing type bullshit, right?
To be able to document it.
You got to be able to talk about it. Again, we get flagged for the dumbest stuff. But yeah, let's get back into it.
A bill to subsidize pot. We should be working on important issues to help our constituents. Instead,
subsidizing pot is an important issue. It's a very important issue.
And again, the money would be taken away from law
and use
enforcement.
the federal government to promote
No, screw that. I'm talking about the money is going to be taken away from single-use plastic. The money is going to be taken away from hydrochemicals. The money is going to be taken away from pharmaceuticals.
This bill's many problematic provisions. It fails to provide even the most basic safeguards against marijuana abuse. The bill provides no limits on or requirements to clearly identify the potency of the marijuana or its extracts or concentrates. Marijuana is far more potent today than it was decades ago.
No, that's a lie.
That's false. That's false.
That is a complete falsehood. I mean, like hash is hash is hash. It's like applesauce has been applesauce and apple bourbon's been apple bourbon. I mean, it's like
we figured as human beings, we figured out how to create concentrates.
Fails to impose a minimum age limit, a restriction recommended by the Surgeon General due to the unique
minimum age limit. I thought they only said 21 and older. could have it. I mean, it's going to be out of the controlled substance. You're not going to have something be controlled substance at Schedule 1 only if you're less than 21. That's ridiculous.
And again, like fear mongering, redundant BS arguments for why we should stop putting people behind bars, why we should stop letting law enforcement F with your lives and take your children away. These are just pointless facts that they're more worried about the border than their own hometown, the people in their own district.
These Ohioans, though, are very worried about a man trap at any ingress or egress from the dispensary department. I wonder
What?
how the Ohio regulations define man trap for their dispensaries.
What the hell's a man trap?
I don't know, but it's required, so you have to do it.
What the? Yeah, you should definitely.
Otherwise, you ain't getting that dispo license.
The human brain
Shit.
continues to develop from before birth into the mid-20s and is vulnerable to the effects of addictive substances.
Jim
Frequent
Jordan,
marijuana
not knowing that.
Adolescents associated with changes in the areas
With his
of the brain
medical
involving
degree, I'm so
attention,
glad to get advice
memory,
from Jim Jordan and
decision-making,
his fucking.
and motivation.
Yeah, well,
PhD.
they're the finder of facts, just like with cannabis. So they found those BS facts that were wrong 85 years ago. They're still the facts, and he still believes them.
I feel so informed though by Dr. Jim Jordan.
Declines in IQ, school performance, and life satisfaction. THC, the chemical primarily responsible for marijuana's psychological effects, poses significant
My
risk,
man said marijuana's.
particularly in higher concentrations. The Surgeon General has concluded that, quote, the risk of physical dependence, addiction, and other negative consequences increase with exposure to high concentrations of THC and the younger the age of initiation. He went on to say higher doses of THC are more likely to produce anxiety, agitation, paranoia, and psychosis.
Look, I have a lot of personal experience with high doses of this stuff. Most of what he just said was complete crap. Where's your personal knowledge? So you know what personal knowledge is requires you to have if you are going to be testifying before a jury in a proceeding in litigation, as opposed to what we're watching right now as a proceeding in parliamentary procedure. It's in the parliaments and Congress. And you need a lesser standard to make laws than you need to find whether or not those laws were violated, because then you need personal knowledge, factual basis in fact for your testimony. And so he can't provide that. He doesn't have the personal knowledge. I can. But then as the finder of fact is Congress, they can find facts that I have no personal knowledge of. And if you want to know more about that, go check out the new abortion laws in some of the states.
Well, in tech, we call that a subject matter expert. You know, someone who's been around a thing for such a long time. They know how to work on something. They know how it operates and the ins and outs of how it does. So, yeah, I really don't think Dr. Jim Jordan knows what he's talking about.
Democrats want to punt these decisions to unelected bureaucrats. Even for those who think that
How about
this
you
is
just
a
get
good
shit done,
idea
bro?
to legalize marijuana, the approach reflected in this bill is short-sighted. We need to spend more time considering the
Short-sighted?
effect of marijuana legalization on
Lance
the
Glore
American
doesn't think
public,
it's short-sighted.
especially
Luke
the effect this
Scarmoza.
bill will have on younger Americans. I strongly urge my colleagues to
Think
vote
of the
no
children.
on the marijuana stimulus bill. The American people expect
Oh, you call it
and
stimulus
frankly
bill. See
deserve
that?
better
Bullshit.
from all of us. I yield
Marijuana
back.
stimulus bill.
Gentleman yields back.
Verbiage attack.
Well, will you guys please
Opening statement.
not vote for Jim Jordan next time? Like, can that be our little snippet? Can we get a collection plate together for like, don't vote for Jim Jordan in his district, and be like, just here, if you want legal weed, you ain't getting it with him. You just ain't.
Right.
And so vote for a Republican there's no, like, so, I'm in a district where I could be Jesus and run as a Democrat and lose. And so like, might try that once. I'm going to first have to change my name
Illegally.
to form my hands. Yeah.
Get a little goatee. But yeah, no,
Yeah.
It's just crazy though how there's still 2021, you know, the year of the Zoom, you know, because last year was all Zoom calls. We had a pandemic. Most people have access to the internet and knowledge in their hands, and yet there's so many other bad words is just causing misinformation all the time, and people cling to it and think it's real. They're like, oh, you know, Trump did
real.
win. I mean,
It
just
is
the
real.
bullshit.
Like what you believe is real. And so reality is a little malleable, and you can actually will reality into being. Which of course science is like, no, you can't. And then you go quantum physics, and then, I'm sorry, quantum mechanics. They go, nah, and then think,
No,
okay,
I
fine.
feel
I can't
you.
explain everything, and some things are a little weird. And so, like when the metaverse kind of like continues to stratify, it's or like getting because NFTs are here, and like people just
Yeah.
they're gonna start dying and going to like the holograms downstate. It's going to be a weird 20 more years, and that's why we need cannabis legalization because your brains aren't ready for the future.
we we need it for so many reasons, for sure, man.
So many.
But I think we're about to see some positive ones. I think we're about to hear some positive stories. Excuse me.
Statements will be included.
I'm gonna
in
go
the
wheel another
record.
beer real quick.
You do that.
Recognize myself for purposes of offering an amendment in nature of a substitute. The clerk will report the amendment.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to HR 3617 offered by Mr. Nadler. Strike all that follows after the
Without
enactment.
objection, the amendment in nature of a substitute will be considered as read and shall be considered as base text for purposes of amendment. I recognize myself to explain the amendment.
Oh, he recognized himself. Very nice of himself.
Of 2021.
This is the part right here. This is the whole reason why this thing's happening today. This is the whole reason. This is the amendment. This is the shit that was like, seriously? Like, so this meeting, again, this is the second day of a 5-hour session. We're into the 34 minutes of another 5-hour session. And now we're getting to why they're hearing where we're hearing it.
Unquote, from the title and references to the title within the bill. Otherwise, it makes no substantive changes to the bill, and I urge all members to support the amendment. Are there any amendments?
So the whole thing for this one right now is just to get rid of 2021, and then other people are going to add their shit if they want, and they can get added with a yays or nays.
To the amendment nature of a substitute.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purposes, Ms. Jackson Lee seek recognition?
Strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you so very much. Your leadership, and of course, the co-sponsors of whom you have named. I'm very pleased to have been an original co-sponsor. And I would like to thank the members of the Subcommittee on Crime, Terrorism, and Homeland Security for their initial and strong support. And of course, all of the members of the House Judiciary Committee. I'm an original co-sponsor of HR 3617, the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act of 2021, or the MORE Act of 2021. I'm proud to support this long overdue measure and to encourage the rest of my colleagues to do so as well. For those of us who've had the privilege of being on the House Judiciary Committee, Mr. Chairman, I know you include yourself among many others, we know that we have been working on this issue as well as other members for such a long time. We've been to the floor of the House, we've been discussing it in our committees, and we have worked. And so this is an important criminal justice reform bill, and I commend the chairman for once again introducing this bill and bringing it before the committee. In fact, it consolidates the discussions that we've had about the over-incarceration of individuals who were addicted or caught up in the cycle of drugs, many of them people of color in inner city neighborhoods. To summarize, provisions of the MORE Act fall into 3 main categories. And let me say that one of the things that is so important is it puts the government, the federal government, as the head of real policy as opposed to the tail. As I will indicate in my statement, so many other states have already moved on this. First, it would remove marijuana or cannabis from the list or the schedule of federally controlled substances. This means that going forward, individuals could no longer be
That's number one
prosecuted
for me.
federally
Just get the
for
goddamn thing
marijuana
off the schedule
offenses,
list.
and that is what has been the upset, if you will, of really truly dealing with criminal justice reform, because they're not prosecuted in the state, but we can prosecute them federally with time. This does not mean that marijuana would now be legal in the entire United States. It would simply remove the federal government from the business of prosecuting marijuana cases and should leave the question of legality to the individual states who have already moved forward. Those states choosing to decriminalize can do so without ongoing interference from the federal government, and those states that choose to continue to make marijuana illegal can continue to do so as well. Second, the bill would establish a taxation structure to collect a sales tax on marijuana, which over the course of 5 years would increase from 5 to 8%. The funds collected through this tax will be used to establish a trust fund to reinvest communities ravaged by the war on drugs, and particularly communities of color. I am made aware of an issue of my dear friend and colleague, who supports this bill, of our friends on the other side. And I want to say that this should be looked at by our Ways and Means and Energy and Commerce and Food and Drug Administration. Look forward to working on the issue dealing with medicinal
We got some funny
marijuana.
fuckers, dude.
The trust fund will be used for rehabilitation and reentry programs in the Department of Justice and for programs in the Small Business Administration to ensure that the burgeoning marijuana market is diverse and opens up opportunities for entrepreneurship in communities that have been adversely impacted by the war on drugs. Let us not singularly suggest that this is only people of color. This is rural and urban. These are small businesses wherever they are that can finally have an opportunity. We want an economic engine to be in urban areas, but we want it to be in rural areas. And there is growth of marijuana farms and activities in rural America. Let's move off of addiction and opioids and get treatment and have people to function in a legal system. Finally, the bill would expunge and seal federal marijuana arrests and convictions and resentence offenders as appropriate, a much needed part of this bill to try to undo the damage that has been done to our communities by decades of unjust enforcement. Thousands of men and women have suffered needlessly from the federal criminalization of marijuana, particularly in communities of color, and have borne the burden of the collateral consequences for those ensnared in the criminal legal system that have damaged our society across generations. You don't know what it's like to have 10 years thrown at you, 25 years use of marijuana and or standing on the corner with marijuana more than the amount that would keep you out of the
Conviction shouldn't
system.
follow you for
The laws enacted for the purpose of the war on drugs have led America to imprison more people than any other country. Mr. Chairman, I
conviction
know
should
that
ruin
you
your
are well
life.
aware of the legislation that we passed when the former chairman was there about opioids. And we didn't get any relief with this bill. But expunging and sealing the arrest and conviction records of people affected by the cannabis laws would remove barriers that help create a permanent second-class status for millions of justice-involved Americans. Our outdated federal laws and policies unwisely require scarce law enforcement resources to be expended on cannabis. Cannabis does not fit the definition of a Schedule I drug, and federal law must be updated to reflect this reality,
right?
just as the majority of the states have already done. 37 states, District of Columbia, Puerto Rico, Guam, adopted laws. 18 states, the District of Columbia, and the Northern Mariana Islands have adopted laws for legalizing
That's right.
cannabis.
That's a lot of places.
Total of 47 states have reformed their laws in one form or another. The state legal cannabis industry already employs almost 250,000 people, and the federal government needs to get out of the way of state level decision
Actually, I
making.
think that already employs 320,000 people.
As well, we need to open the door to research, better banking and tax laws.
This is still
and,
pretty perfunctory, though. They're all reading from scripts. I don't care which side they're from.
Finally, we need to do
for
this
sure.
without continuing to spend federal resources on criminalization.
But it's the
and unjust
anti ones that
incarceration for
really
marijuana offenses.
the-
We need
for-
to pass
for-
the MORE Act.
the
That is why I
the
support it
perfunctory
today.
side of
Thank
things.
you very much, and I
Mhm.
yield back my time.
There's a guy in Texas. He'll
Gentlelady
speak.
yields back.
And
I will
that's the
now
shit that-
recognize myself.
We really need to focus on.
I like how he
and look at-
recognizes himself.
Brief
It's like,
statement.
how are you doing?
I am not going to repeat.
Oh, thank you. It's good to see me too.
The rationale for the
I
bill, the
love
reasons
myself.
for it outlined by myself earlier and by Ms. Jackson Lee. But I do want to answer a question or a point raised by the ranking member, Mr. Jordan, in which he talked about the effect that marijuana and THC have on developing brains of
He
young
should be
people.
like,
This
yo,
is true.
if I smoke some right now,
It
I'd
is
probably be
also
better
true,
off.
obviously,
It
of
does help the brain.
nicotine in a much worse way. But we don't put nicotine users in jail. We discourage their use.
That's right.
And that's essentially the same approach we'll take here. Nicotine is a far more is a far more harmful drug than marijuana. But we don't put people in jail. We simply discourage its use. And what we're doing here is to discourage the use of marijuana, but to take it off the controlled substances list where it never belonged.
Never
And to,
belonged. I'm just loving though that the guy who's recognizing himself in the chairman. His title is chairman, the good gentleman from New York.
But you know, this is the process, right? Because this is what I dig too. When they, it's always I want to be recognized. Well, for what reason do you want to be recognized? So I can have the last word. Like this is like really like it's almost like you're married. Like you really gotta have the last word. You know what I'm saying? But let's get back into
It comes down to if you have the votes or not, but then at least in the record it's there, and then you can keep building on that.
Yeah, no, I get it. Yeah, this past
placement on Schedule 1. And with that, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman,
well, and again, this passed the House last year, but because they're amending they're just getting rid of 2021 off the whole damn thing. That's all they're doing. They're just all of this just to get rid of 2021 off the bill. And yeah.
you yield, Mr. Chairman? Would you yield for one moment?
Certainly.
I just had a question. I understand that we don't put nicotine users in jail, but underage nicotine users, but we certainly put people who sell nicotine to underage users in jail. And I'm wondering whether, and we give them criminal penalties, I'm wondering whether you would amend the MORE Act to include that.
Well, the federal government doesn't do that, and under this bill, federal government won't do it, but the states can do it if they want to. For what purpose does Mr. Roy seek recognition?
Who'd strike the last word?
This is the one, dude. This is the mother. Just pay attention to what he says about why he's afraid of legalization.
Gentleman is recognized.
Well, I guess this week, as we're considering $3.5 trillion bills, we now know the economic recovery plan of our Democrat colleagues.
Love the politician here. It's the Democrat plan. The whole social liberal agenda bullshit.
That's how politics is. We want to do this, but you're standing in our way. Oh, I would do it. I would legalize it. Well, so would we if you would just get out of our way so that we could legalize it how the Republicans want. Oh, no, I'm sorry. We're going to do it the restorative justice method the Democrats want. It's like, guys, you both want to legalize it. What the fuck?
It's funny when you talk about justice, because when he talks about why he's afraid of legalization, he clearly talks about the leveraging that people use against people who are arrested. It's the most effed up thing in our judicial. You're telling me you kind of not bribe, but blackmail someone. You force them into a situation. Remember that young girl a couple years ago? There was a young lady that got caught with a joint. They decided to turn her, and then she died in the drug deal that the cops want her to be a part of. So, yeah, it's just. But this guy, when his defense,
okay. You can't argue that it's less or more harmful than alcohol. You can't. I mean, if you're arguing that it's more harmful than alcohol, you have absolutely no factual basis with what you're saying.
Yes.
And so the fact that it is treated at a federal level like heroin, where if you're arguing heroin to alcohol, it's like, wow, you're gonna, yeah. I mean, you really are looking at a much harder risk curve when it comes to the heroin as opposed to the alcohol. And this is reasons why we get flagged. Maybe we shouldn't but we're trying to have an honest conversation about the regulation and the appropriate regulation of particular substances.
Yeah, an honest conversation that's realistic by two subject matter experts, right, who have consumed both alcohol and cannabis and can tell you decades.
Yeah. For decades.
My studies have proven more effed up shit happens under alcohol than cannabis, period.
Yeah. I see. My experience also corroborates that. Yeah.
That's the word. That's the word that this guy enforces or endorses when you just listen to it.
Which is to build the job creation effort on the back of pot legalization. Look, I think there are some bipartisan consensus here about wanting to give latitude to our states. I'm a big advocate of federalism, as my colleagues on this committee knows. I supported last year a bill to give prosecutorial discretion and to encourage prosecutorial discretion among federal law enforcement officers, and I used to be in the U.S. Attorney's offices. So many of my colleagues on this committee did as well, and certainly support giving that kind of discretion to ensure that we're not overstepping our bounds, particularly in states that have made a choice about simple possession. But this bill is absurd. I mean, it's just completely absurd. And the American people, we're creating a cannabis justice office within DOJ that requires the Assistant Attorney General to appoint a director to award grants, enter into contracts on behalf of the Cannabis Justice Office, and hire as many employees as needed for the Cannabis Justice Office to create community
Kind of like in the
reinvestment
30s when it was the
programs,
exact
but also
opposite, where it's
cottage
like we have to totally just get rid of all this stuff, and we need all these federal departments to help administer all the stuff we've gotten rid of.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. His argument is about we need more people to arrest people, not people to take care of them and create proper infrastructure and give everybody a chance.
Or he
for
thinks that there's going to
pot.
be like 5 million people working in the cannabis industry in 20 years,
Or
maybe 10 million.
And again, these are the same cats that think like as soon as you legalize it, everybody's gonna be stoned, walking around like zombies.
Well, I mean, like anybody who wears that haircut.
Hey.
Now I'm immediately kind of like suspect. I'm like, I think I kind of know the person I'm dealing with here. So, check your wallets and just don't take anything that he says as offensive. He's just being himself.
He's being a politician.
Nonsense, right? I mean, this isn't, again, if this is the economic recovery program for my Democratic colleagues, I mean, I guess that might make sense, and maybe we all need to go smoke
Would the
pot, because
gentleman
this is
yield?
absurd. I'll yield briefly because I have a couple other points to make.
Yes, I simply want to say that, again, the states under this bill will continue to have complete
Hybrid
discretion
office in the
to do what they
Congress. I
want
love it.
to keep pot illegal, et cetera, and that will have effect within those states. And secondly, the pot industry that we're setting up, as you characterize it, it will cost nothing because it will be financed entirely by a tax on marijuana growers.
Okay, reclaiming my time, the chairman, it makes my case for me, right? In the minds of my Democratic colleagues, right? We
Don't tax the
create
growers.
industry by taxing and then having programs in the Department of Justice, like the Cannabis Justice Office, to create a economic industry. Look, here's the deal.
Please
when
tell
I was
me.
in the U.S. Attorney's Office, not once, and in all the people that I worked with who prosecuted drug crimes their whole careers, because I was there
Listen to shit.
briefly,
Stop calling
Not
plants
one.
drugs.
were they ever going around and trying to find the individual who was smoking a joint behind the bleachers in a football game, or was caught with a
Stop
small
trivializing the
bag,
almost million
you know,
people
was
arrested every year
almost-
until it crashed in
And
2020.
I know
Well,
that
seriously,
there are,
that's what he's talking about. He's like-
exceptions, and I know the terrible.
Like his argument is when we're law enforcement, we're not busy hounding soccer moms and kids who are smoking behind bleachers. No, we're busy getting the big bad guys. F you, dude. F you.
history with respect to abuse of power by authorities with respect to race, and these are all things that we should tamp out, and we all agree on that. But the idea that the federal government typically, that U.S. attorneys' offices typically are going around and putting people in jail because of simple possession is just not true, right? When you have a prosecution for someone for simple possession, it's because you've cut a deal and you've worked out.
Right there. This is fucked up too, because he talks about how like he's busted people with guns, like he says these are hardened criminals with extreme criminals like murder or some shit, and like, oh, they had a bag of weed on them, so now you just broke you what do you call it when you negotiate your plea deal? You plea deal down from murder to a bag of weed? Are you kidding me? This is his argument.
Out an arrangement because the dude was doing bad stuff, and you know it, and he knows it, and he can give up sources, and then you cut a deal for possession or something else, and then you're able to go after the real bad guys. And almost all of these people moving mountains of pot are moving mountains of other stuff, including, by the way, human beings right now in concert with cartels and moving human trafficking because there are wide open borders.
If you are dealing marijuana, you are human trafficking.
Well
I
beyond
love it.
just
Way to conflate things.
Seriously.
simply descheduling, which I would probably oppose. But if we were having a simple debate on descheduling, I would at least entertain some notions of maybe we could change the scheduling or otherwise. But I think it is problematic. And I think this bill is flawed on its face by virtue of the fact that it's creating mountains of additional federal programs and offices under the auspices of supposedly legalizing pot. One final point is just this. I, for one, have not bought into this narrative that, the fact that we had a significant number of people incarcerated was inherently in and of itself a bad thing. The fact is we want to have our streets.
Exactly what I'm talking about. Like the thinking here.
I want
like,
a street safe from people like this guy.
Seriously though, I mean, what?
Be safe. And frankly, right now we are allowing too many people to get away with
Too many
crime,
freedoms.
because frankly, we're defunding cops. We're going after all the people that are engaging in law enforcement. And now we're trying to take away another tool for going after bad actors. When in fact, we have rampant crime increasing across the country, murder rates skyrocketing. And we're basically reverting back to the failed policies of the 70s and the 80s that gave us the movement to try to clamp down in both the war on drugs and to clamp down on gangs and clamp down on illegal activity. And so I, for one, have continued to be a pro-justice member of Congress, and I will oppose it.
That guy
Pro-justice
sucks.
bullshit. Seriously though, like that the whole pro-justice argument, and like I've used this as a tool to pretty much intimidate and punish people, Americans, citizens, just going through the day to day. Like, and then when you use the argument like this is a tool by law enforcement, well, if it's not illegal, if it's not a wrong thing, it's not a tool. Surprise! You are not helping anybody.
Seriously, I mean, like, and neither was his haircut and his little goatee. I mean, like, it just
Yes.
makes no sense. It's like, oh, if you're not doing it specifically this way, you're screwed. Like, you have to cut this, the whole, it'd be like you shave everything. Why is he so specific, and why is he not allowing anything that's not that? But also, why is it criminal? If you're not this, you're criminal. And then cramping down on criminal activity and saying that drugs are criminal activity, as opposed to saying like humans are weird and they like to do stuff. And we should be honest with these humans about the stuff that they may do. And so,
Exactly.
I love the regulation, because then you're not going to get something laced with fentanyl. It's going to be regulated.
Safe access, and not just like the plant itself, but like think about the times that you've, like when I was younger and I'm in a different place and I need to acquire weed. Where do I go? I'm not going to go to a store. I'm going to go hang out at a bar and perhaps find myself in situations I probably shouldn't be in.
You had safe access to a toxic substance, and then you could have ordered more toxic substances. You mean like, I would like a shot, a beer, and then also a pack of those smokes. And you could have ordered all of those.
Exactly.
And you had safe access to them, because you know that pot, that shot, and then I'm sorry, the pot was not involved yet. The shot, the beer, and then also the smokes, they were all tax paying compliant with the federal regulations. And if the federal regulations can create safety and stability in that garbage that actually addicts and kills you, nicotine, especially the inhaling of it in the cigarette format, much more so than the alcohol, thinking that the federal government can't regulate the cannabis flower is just stupid as stupid can get. Like, I can think of nothing
Seriously.
dumber than that.
But it didn't. So like now we're about to have a follow through from, and this is what confuses me about politics in America and the world. Representative Conan from Tennessee, brilliant man. He's about to speak, and he's from Tennessee. You know what I mean? Like, he's
Gentleman yields
been
back.
fighting for a long time.
For what purpose does Mr. Cohen seek recognition?
To strike the last word and many of the words over the last
Gentleman is
3 or 4
recognized.
decades. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's good to have this bill before us, and its time has come, and time came a long time ago. I want to recognize Mr. Blumenauer, who with me has been a sponsor of these type of bills for at least 15 years. Really, Mr. Blumenauer preceded me in Congress, although my work was even in the state Senate in Tennessee and before that. I'd like to remember Maurice Henchy, who was a leader in trying to get marijuana descheduled and change that. Dana Rohrabacher, a Republican, was a leader, and he saw the need to reschedule marijuana, and he was an advocate. I know Mr. Massey was big on hemp, and it's a cousin. Bottom line is, the war on drugs was a failure, and marijuana is less harmful to our society than alcohol by far, and nicotine. And it should not be
We just missed 420. Should we do a 420 just for 420?
Oh no, we're not 20 past the hour.
No, I meant on his clock.
16 minutes.
Right behind him is 401.
No, that's counting down his time.
No,
He
I was
only
just
has
being
4 more
facetious.
minutes. I know.
The whole point is, I will see you on the other side, my friend. Wait, where's the button?
Hit
Where's
play,
the button?
dude.
Huh?
Mr. Cohen was making some very cogent points.
Schedule 1 drug,
Yeah,
never
I got
should
you.
have been a Schedule 1 drug. It was only put there years ago because of
What up?
antiquated thinking,
Niggy is smoking some.
if you call it thinking.
It was
try to
not thinking, Mr. Cohen.
People angered and direct their anger at Latinos, and African
Black
Americans,
people, jazz
and later
musicians,
at white
hippies.
hippies.
hippies. Yeah.
That's what Nixon did. That's what Harry Anslinger did in the 30s. That's what Nixon did in the 70s, was to get people to get upset with his
Culture
enemy,
war.
opposed the war in Vietnam. And Anslinger needed a job, and they
He
found a
did.
way to
Anslinger got a government job for decades.
look at it as
Right.
something that musicians
Stuck it
did,
on that tip for a long
African-American
time.
musicians, jazz musicians,
Fucking everybody else over.
Hispanics did, and then later white hippies did. They tried to disenfranchise them, take away their rights by convicting them, putting them in jail, and they were fodder for a criminal justice system gone astray. The fact that this bill gives money to African Americans to get into the business of marijuana is right, because otherwise it's going to be simply Caucasian business, and that's what it is.
That's right. That's right.
African Americans are disproportionately affected by the arrests, as were white, quote unquote, hippies, and they were bludgeoned. Schedule 1 is heroin.
Became a class war.
Well, he's right, man. And so, like, I like that. I mean, so
Adam.
can, you know, you're disproportionately impacted, but then at the same time, like this unequal treatment is to try to like create an equality. And you're going to basically get an affirmative action type of system. And so we'll see how the constitutional amendments go on that. I just still don't like how they're trying to reduce the barriers to entry and put them back up at the same time. And then the lottery's rigged and all this other stuff. So it's like, man, the more limited you make it, the more exclusive you make it, the more prone to, I mean, there's both sides. If it's an open market, you're going to see bribes. If it's a limited market, you're going to see political influence that are rigging the game. And almost damned if you do, damned if you don't. But either way, it's better than it being illegal.
Exactly. I mean, even though we'll get flagged every time we speak, we couldn't speak before, and now we're in a better
Let's hope
position.
we don't
than
get
were.
flagged this time. But I'm going to
Well, I
dip.
don't
I'm
think
going to
so.
go head out to dinner. You keep doing the good fight, and I'll talk to you on Wednesday. And I'll see
brother.
everybody else there. Thank you so much. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, shout out to all the members.
Thanks for joining us, Tom.
Yep.
All right. So let's get back to this. Side by side. There it is. Mr. Cohen, make it
Marijuana
sense.
is not in that class. I was shocked to hear Mr. Jordan's comments. This is someplace we should have bipartisanship, and we had it with Dana Rohrabacher, and we had it with some Republicans. We had it with Matt Gaetz. Matt's been a leader on this. There have been a lot of Republicans who over the years have joined with us to make this more of a bipartisan approach. I remember a time I was on an airplane flying back from Nashville, and I was a state senator, and a guy said to me, he said, you know, Senator Cohen, I don't support a lot of what you
What up,
do,
Chris?
but I like your positions on marijuana and pets. Of course, I had a bubble go over in my head of him getting high and playing with his kitten or his dog. But that's something we could be bipartisan on. Pets and pot. And we should be. Because it's just, Americans have a right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And people who are smoking
Fundamentally.
marijuana, part of what they're doing is the pursuit of happiness.
I agree.
And for the government to put them in jail and take away their rights, and if we know they can't get food stamps, can't get college scholarships because of marijuana convictions, that's absurd. Just totally absurd. So this bill is an effort in the right direction. It's a justice bill. And just about every time people have voted on this, they voted for it, to decriminalize marijuana, to legalize marijuana, to make it used for medical marijuana. You got states like Louisiana that hadn't let the people vote, but if they would let the people vote, it would be 2/3 for it. It's 2/3 to 3/4 everywhere. So to my Republican colleagues, come into the 21st century on something. And this is a
Damn.
place where citizens, I think Colorado has shown it, they voted for marijuana. It's legal there. It's a business. And it really hadn't affected the Denver Broncos performance. It hadn't affected the crowd's performance. Mr. Buck, would you like me to yield?
I appreciate that.
And it'll help our grocery stores.
I appreciate the work we're doing together, and I was just looking for some more. I love pets, and I'm wondering what you're doing on pets that I
I
can
hate this
join
dumb
you on.
shit. Like,
We've got a whole
I'm
bunch
gonna
of
try
bills, and I'll send them over to you.
I hate the shit where this old white dude's like, "Oh, I'm gonna try and be your grandfather, cousin, friend," and like making a happy joke. Because I hate this because the legalization topic is not nothing to joke about, in my opinion. You know, lives are being ruined. Lives are ruined. Lives have been ruined. People are in goddamn prison still. Two offhand. No, it wasn't a small amount of weed, but their lives have been ruined and lost. One guy I know, you know, their daughters are grown, graduated high school, graduated college. Some got married. Some people's children had lives, lost moms, dads. Like, it ain't no fucking joking matter, but you know, here we are.
We're good on pets, and we're good on pot.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Mr. Chairman,
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does Mr. Shabbat seek recognition?
move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This discussion is becoming more and more interesting on both sides, I think. And, you know, I think one thing we've, Mr. talked about this, but basically we're seeing more and more of what my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, the Democrats, what their agenda really is. I mean, it's legalizing drugs, it's defunding the police, it's open borders, it's raising your taxes. And we could go on and on from there. A number
Would
of
the
my
gentleman yield for a
Bullshit
second
boogeyman.
for helpful?
I will after a while if I have some time left.
You forgot
Um,
communism and
what the
socialism.
difference is what the, excuse me?
Have to add in communism and socialism.
Oh, you can add that if you'd like to, as I'm sure you would. I've heard a number of my
the stupidity
Democratic
of that reply.
colleagues
Like, I guess
talk
you would.
about this being an
This
economic
was
engine.
4 days
You know
ago.
what would be an economic engine is not raising
Right.
our taxes. But the Democrats are trying very hard to do that right now to pay for this $3.5 trillion boondoggle that they haven't been able to get the votes yet. They may do it, they may not. We really don't know. It's interesting to watch, but it's incredible some of the stuff that's in there. And the president the other day, it doesn't matter how much it is, it could be 10 trillion or 20 trillion, because he says it doesn't cost anything. I mean, it's pretty incredible. That's right up there with Nancy Pelosi, our speaker, having said that we got to pass the bill to find out what's in it. This thing is just incredible. We don't know how large it is, but it doesn't matter because it won't cost anything. Nobody's going to have to pay for it, according to the president, President
Matter of
Biden.
fact, we'll make more money.
This particular legislation that
There
we
won't
have
be any
before us,
focus on
today. I mean, use your
messing with
common
people's
sense.
lives.
The chairman mentioned before nicotine, and you know, one of the big differences is obviously nicotine doesn't impair one's driving as marijuana does, and alcohol.
Okay, so this guy clearly doesn't know anybody that smokes cigarettes. I mean, like, have you tried taking a pack of cigarettes, like someone who smokes cigarettes like every day, a pack a day? Have you tried taking their cigarettes away for a day or two? All right, and you're gonna tell me you're gonna be driving insane when they're all stressed and mad, like when we talk about intoxication, cannabis intoxication, it's not the same intoxication when it comes to like beer. It's not even intoxication. It's definitely not the same. Like, I hate the word high when we talk about high, but two different things.
Alcohol, and like lots of my colleagues would say, well, we allow alcohol, why not marijuana? They both impair driving, no question about that. And we've already got enough impaired drivers out there who are intoxicated.
See, that's the dangerous part about cannabis and smoking. It's goddamn lighting it. Sorry about that, Silver Wolf. That sucks, dude.
With alcohol, and now we want to have people smoking pot as well, more and more, because if we legalize it, there will be more. There's no question about that. You know, the bottom line is we ought to be doing what's in the best interest of the American people, what's going to keep them safe. Yes, we have freedoms, we have rights, but we know that young people will end up smoking more marijuana if you
That's false. That's false. Look at all the fucking legal states.
legalize it. That's also going to It's going to
False.
make education in this country. I'm a former school teacher.
False.
It's all
You apparently were a shitty school teacher, Steve Shabbat. If you don't know kids, you were a shitty school teacher.
already a challenge right now, and we're competing with the Japanese and the South Koreans and you name it. But this is just going to infringe even more on that effort that we're trying to get our kids up to the standards so we can compete with those countries that I just mentioned. So this is just, wrong-headed legislation.
His points were so wrong when it comes to competition for education. The whole point is we've been lying to the kids with miseducation about drugs and perceptions of like coffee to cannabis to alcohol. We're just constantly lying to ourselves. So shit, it's dumb.
Legislation in my view. And if you're looking at, again, about the Democrats' agenda and just what they've been bringing up in this Congress and other things on the law enforcement front, defunding the police, taking away qualified immunity from police officers, which basically means that police officers can be sued.
What any qualified immunity means, if like they kill somebody, you can sue that too. Yeah, I would like to be able to my family to go after somebody who shot me. Because in any pretense, you don't know me personally, but I definitely can tell you I'm never gonna go on a rampage. I don't believe, like, in my core, I'm not the best person, but I'm never gonna go on a shooting rampage. So with that being said, if I got shot in a situation, there's probably something more than the story being said. Anyways, that's why any qualified immunity is okay.
Personally, who's going to want to be a police officer in this country if you can sue them personally and go after their kids' college funds, their pensions, and that sort of thing? And we've seen crime rates going up in cities all across the country because the police officers are afraid to be aggressive at all or proactive at all, because in some places they would be able to be sued personally. So this is consistent with that whole line of being soft on crime. There's a number of communities across the country where we've had prosecutors, for example, who are extremely weak on crime. They don't want to prosecute anybody anymore. We've seen crime going up in those communities. They're doing away with cash bail so that you want to get the police officers arrest somebody. They're out on the street before the police officer has time to even do the paperwork.
This is a dumb argument. I mean, how many times, like from big city to small city, like I've lived in a mall, and in the small towns, like how many good old boys get out of jail with dumb shit, drinking, fighting, beating, like that happens overnight. The paperwork. What are you talking about, dude? Like just to keep me behind bars longer? Craziness.
And that's making our communities less safe. So this is right in with those other things. Legalizing marijuana. What's next? Is it going to be cocaine? Crack, LSD, you name it.
You show me where the crack and LSD and cocaine marches are, and we'll talk about that then.
That's why I'm going to vote no, and I would urge my colleagues to do the same. Yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose does Ms. Dean seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise in support of the MORE Act, and I'm a little baffled and puzzled by the previous speaker. I'm not sure what any of that had to do with the MORE Act. When we know better, we do better. Last year, I lent my voice to the historical vote that passed the MORE Act through the House, and I proudly do so again. I have discussed the importance of treating addiction in this chamber time and time again. Criminalization does not work and is not the answer. In 2021, we know that it is ludicrous that marijuana be on Schedule 1, drugs which include bath salts, heroin, meth. More importantly, the MORE Act heavily emphasizes reparative justice through social equity programs that acknowledge those who have been most impacted under criminalization, Black and brown communities. As we know, individuals with a marijuana conviction are riddled with punishments that go beyond the risk of jail time to include a prohibition from obtaining federal benefits, from accessing student loans, or even a pathway to nationality due to marijuana's criminalized status. To correct these historical injustices relating to prohibition, The MORE Act expunges and resentences marijuana convictions at the federal level to support the development of expungement programs at the state and local level. It also prohibits immigration penalties based on marijuana. These are only some of the highlights of the impact of this important piece of legislation. The MORE Act will join a bipartisan effort to right our historic wrongs. I was happy to join my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass Representative Jeffrey's Equal Act. I hope for a similar wave of support when I join Representative Trone as the co-lead for the Fresh Start Act next month. Our bill will establish a grant program for states to facilitate automated record sealing and expungement. This will allow for Americans to not be burdened for the rest of their lives by one incident. When we know better, we do better. And today we have the opportunity to begin to address some of the historical injustices of our past. With that, I lend my support to the MORE bill, and I thank all of the prime sponsors of this bill. I encourage all of you to do the same. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Chairman?
The gentlelady yields back.
You.
Does Mr. Jordan seek recognition?
Well, unless there's someone else, someone in front of me?
For what purpose does Mr. Gates seek recognition?
Move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am a proud.
Okay, I got the. So this is another part of why I wanted to watch this. I really, really, really would hate that I totally agree with like 99.9% of the shit Get says right now. I really hate myself for it, but apparently he has really good writers.
Co-sponsor of the MORE Act because the federal government has screwed up marijuana policy in this country for a generation. We lied to people about the effects of marijuana, and then we used marijuana as a cudgel to incarcerate just wide swaths of communities, and particularly in African-American communities. And so I am not offended by the concept of restorative justice in marijuana policy, because we cannot honestly say that the war on drugs impacted suburban white communities the same way it affected urban Black communities. We can't say that marijuana enforcement was happening the same way on the corner than it was happening in the fraternity house. And we have an opportunity to fix that problem. You know, the war on drugs, much like many of our forever wars, has been a failure. If there's been a war on drugs, drugs have won that war. And so rather than
God damn it. Why do you have to make such a good point?
continuing to make a small group of people continue to pay the price for those bad decisions, we ought to democratize access to a federalist system that allows states to make these decisions. And I respect the concerns of my Republican colleagues, but it seems to be a little inconsistent with our perspective on federalism to say that we don't want states to innovate and develop their own programs and to test and to fail and to succeed and then to copy each other's best practices in a way that.
Let us be reminded that Matt Gaetz is implicated with the True Leaf controversy and the guy when they go on the boats and the little girls and funding the policy or swaying the opinion and policy in Florida. So he is not all good.
That improves quality of life for people. I heard the ranking member make comments on the developing brain, and I pay close attention to that because I do believe the ranking member of the Judiciary Committee likely has the best developed brain in my conference. But there is specific science that we've had access to that informs on brain development. And it all has to do with when brain cells stop dividing. So up until the age of 24, for most people, your brain cells are still dividing. And so things like football or wrestling or soccer or a number of things can be harmful during that process. And that's why we take such care for the brain. That's why we encourage the innovation around protective equipment. After 24, those cells stop dividing. And there is very compelling research that suggests that utilization of cannabis can actually protect the brain after that division from
he makes sense. He's making sense right now, but he does say some stupid shit.
So in the country right now, we are all seeing the impact at a very high level of when someone starts to have mental acuity that declines. And if we are able to have access for people to a medicine that would help, I would think we would want that for everyone, from the least powerful to the most powerful. Taxes are an issue raised in the bill, and I want to thank Chairman Nadler and Congresswoman Jackson Lee for hearing me out.
It's interesting he brings up the tax thing, but honestly, I think the taxes in the process are going to be one of the things that help push it through. We all hate the bullshit of like, it's medical, and in no way should you pay for taxes on medical, but also there's no reason why you should be in jail, and it's still a reality. We have to get past that.
Out on this point. In my state, in Florida, there's not permissive adult use. It is a medical program. So the people who use marijuana in my state use it for medicine. Nowhere in America today do we tax medicine. And I do have some concerns about the provision.
Oh, actually, he's wrong there on that point too. Oklahoma does tax in their program. Oklahoma has some infrastructure because Oklahoma used to be like what Washington State was, but because people can't get the shit together, no one defended medical in the parliamentary process. No one defended the actual the stopping of 502, or what killed medical in Washington State was SB 5052. So yeah, there are some people that pay taxes only one place, and that's Oklahoma, I believe. So anyways,
provisions of the bill that for the first time would impose a tax on people who are trying to get well or get better. And so I hope as we work on the legislation going forward that we think about people exercising adult use rights versus people participating in a medical program, both from the consumer and from the grower standpoint. I really like giving this speech every year, but it does sort of feel like deja vu, Mr. Chairman. And I regret that deeply because we ought to pass bills into law. This bill is not going to become law. The Senate won't take it up and pass it. I wish they would, but they won't. There is legislation they would take up and pass, the States Act, which I think might underdo it a little on some of the needed restorative justice.
this is double talk part. I don't think the States Act can be before what this MORE Act could be. And again, we all ask when is this going to be heard, or what's next? But it's all about the goddamn calendars and Schumer and not who's in charge of the House now. So it was McConnell still. So these guys have to put shit in the calendar for it to be heard like this, and then it goes through committees and things like that. But I think he's again throwing out some bullshit like this bill does have more of a chance. I mean, we're watching it now. We're watching it happen, I think.
Build some momentum. I think about the years Mr. Blumenauer's been working on this, and frankly, how little progress we've made on something that is so overwhelmingly popular in the country, and we are paralyzed. And the result of that paralysis is that patients have higher costs, the businesses have a problem meeting the needs of their patients, and we have a very disjointed system. So when I asked the chairman in the last Congress whether following the passage of the MORE Act, we might consider taking up the States Act, the chairman's response to me was, no, we want to negotiate off the MORE Act with the Senate, which as a legislative strategy made some sense to me at the time, but it didn't work. And here we are, and we don't have a bill. So it's just my sincere hope that we take a strong stand, pass the MORE Act, make the right, just, proper arguments regarding federalism and restorative justice, but then we not merely surrender the debate to those who want to see us divided and paralyzed, but we advance that debate with legislation that could actually pass the Senate. I thank the committee's indulgence, and I yield back.
Missouri has medical cell.
Gentleman yields back for a purpose.
Thanks for your info there, Junior.
Scanlon seek recognition.
I move to strike the last word.
Oh, good. Appreciate you,
Gentleman is
DKO.
recognized.
It happens a lot.
You know, in recent years, we've seen states lead the way and demonstrate how to responsibly regulate cannabis. But our federal policy has lagged behind. We've seen in Pennsylvania this disconnect between federal and state policy can have harmful and sometimes tragic consequences. Pennsylvania is a state that allows medical cannabis as a treatment for opioid addiction. And many Pennsylvanians have safely used medicinal cannabis to treat their addiction symptoms. But across Pennsylvania, confusion about the legal status of cannabis and the mismatch between federal and state laws has caused healthcare providers to avoid federal grant funds or to turn away people who can legally use cannabis. Recently, we've heard about a Pennsylvania man who'd been using medicinal cannabis to treat his addiction symptoms, but he was denied access to a federally funded state program for addiction treatment because he had a medicinal marijuana card. He died of an overdose just a couple weeks later. So this tragic incident is one of many examples of how our federal drug policy is failing Americans. We shouldn't continue to criminalize
Utah's
safe
mail text
cannabis use,
too.
and we absolutely cannot continue to keep people in prison for low-level cannabis-related offenses. I strongly support the MORE Act and look forward to passing it out of committee today. Thank you. I yield back.
For the gentlelady yields back. For what purposes, Mr. Jordan seek recognition?
To strike the last word and talk on the bill.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I actually agree with a number of things my good friend and colleague, Mr. Gates.
Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Before I gotta listen to this guy's shit. Hold on a second. Wait one. Here we go. All right, let's get back to it.
From Florida said, maybe we can work on an amendment to say that, put an age in here of 25. It's why I referenced that in my opening statement, because we know it impacts younger people differently. But this is not just a bill. I mean, this is important, not just a bill to legalize marijuana for medical use, which I know the gentleman from Florida supports. This is not just a bill to legalize marijuana for recreational use. This is a bill that subsidizes the marijuana industry. Page 65 of the bill. The administrator of the Small Business Administration shall establish and carry out a program to be known as the Cannabis Opportunity Program to provide loans. Wow. Page 76. The
Wow.
administrator
Like he's a
may
fucking
not decline
detective.
to make a loan.
Oh my God. Like why everything this time he's not an intelligent man. He's not, I don't get why he's got so much power in the Republican Party. Like, again, this is your leadership, guys. Like, I'm left or right. I'm just want weed legal, but
Or a grant under this subsection, an eligible intermediate if they're in the cannabis related legitimate business. So here's the deal. This is not about legalizing marijuana, not just about legalizing it for medical use, which the gentleman from Florida pointed out, veterans and others are using it for that. I understand.
ooh. So here is something that I really wanted to point out. So the parliamentary procedure, let's just replay this part real quick and just listen to what he says. He talks about the gentleman from Florida, talked about veterans.
And under this subsection, an eligible intermediate if they're in the cannabis related legitimate business. So here's the deal. This is not about legalizing marijuana, not just about legalizing it for medical use, which the gentleman from Florida pointed out, veterans and others are using it for that.
So the parliamentary procedure, which McConnell gets so good credit at manipulating the conversation that happens in our process. I don't think Matt Gaetz mentioned veterans at all in his speech. Like, he must have was intending on it, but he didn't. And so then Jim Jordan now recognizes that part of the speech that Gaetz didn't say under a very important topic. No, I think not. I think these jackasses meet behind bars, whatever they do, and talk about what their stance is going to be. Like they automatically know this is how we're going to go. And that's the unfortunate part about even with the $1 trillion bullshit going on right now, these assholes just waste our time with all this blah blah blahing, because first they negotiate in the background. How are we gonna beat this without it's like WWF, wrestling bullshit, predetermined winners. So that's what I'm getting from this as I watch this.
That I understand, not just for recreational use. This is a subsidy program. Think about it. Typical family out there. All kinds of crazy policies they've seen from our Democrat friends: defund the police, pay people not to work, open up the border, don't even have a border. And now, oh, by the way, your tax dollars are going to be used to grow the cannabis, the marijuana industry.
Just on weak points.
Such a deal for the taxpayers.
And it is.
Just what the folks in the 4th District of Ohio, I get the privilege to represent, just what they want.
If you're in the
I'm
4th
sure
District of
that.
Ohio,
In fact, I've not had one single person
here's
come
your
up to me and say, do this.
Leader.
But I get comments every day
This
about
ass
their
clown.
concern about rising
You're
crime. They're
in
concerned about
Ohio
what's
are
happening
being
on the
laughed
border.
out
They're
because
concerned that they
this
can't find
dickhead.
enough people to work. Every single employer I talk to tells me that, not just in Ohio, but all over the country.
No.
But no, we're going to have a bill that actually is going to use their tax dollars, American tax dollars, to grow the cannabis industry at a time when we got all these other major problems.
Ending
That was the focus of
prohibition.
So I hope we have some amendments. And I know that the
Decreases-
gentleman
makes
from
the border
Florida
safer,
supports the amendments. I think Mr. Massey's
patient
going to have an
access,
amendment to get rid of this
everything he's mad about.
subsidy stimulus
Any
program
prohibition
for
will
the
fix.
cannabis industry. I hope someone will have an amendment, probably will from our side, to limit the age where this all applies to protect those younger developing minds that we all want to protect. That's where I hope we go with this
Yeah,
bill.
because everybody's
See how it
advocating
all
for
shakes
like
out.
Gentleman, yield?
10-year-olds to smoke
Sure.
weed, right?
I think the gentleman makes important points about those subsidies, but it's important to remember where those dollars come from. They come from the tax
Yes.
that is imposed by the bill. So we wouldn't want our fellow Americans thinking that the general revenue of the government is going to be dispersed through this. And while I'm not going to defend those provisions, I do think it's important to understand why they're there. Marijuana resulted in an entire generation of young Black males being incarcerated, and there is resentment that it's resulting in a lot of white people getting rich.
Again, we're just watching theater. They were staged.
And that's what
like,
it is. And so that's why
Gates
it's
forgot
there.
to mention about the veterans.
The gentleman
Jim
can
Jordan
disagree
always
with it,
does.
but also on the banking and the loans, there's
But the
there's
Republican
also
Party
a rational basis for that. A lot of people
is
who are
going to
in
go
marijuana
against
businesses
legalization
can't
in the end.
access the normal
Federally.
U.S. financial
This is
system.
it.
And so we have to
This proves it.
create these like concierge programs because your banker in the 4th District of Ohio can't make those loans.
So we have to create a special program in the government to loan out money. And the idea that money is not fungible just doesn't make any sense. This is government money.
Money from
The
taxes.
idea that, this is only from this.
And money that's being spent now on the drug war, right? Like $1 billion against the plant, and 1,000, and the plant's winning. Like what you guys are speaking, it's just a waste of time. It's just wasting your time.
That does we never use that argument anywhere else. It's all government money. Well, we should, but it's not how it works. We know
this government would run away. You and I like a lot more if we did that.
We know in practice that's not how it works. Money is fungible, and this is just more money in the hands of government to grow the cannabis business.
This fear mongering party about like the money, but like the money being spent right now to incarcerate people presently behind bars because they are, or to take kids to run a system like CPS because they are taking kids. I mean, any prohibition will just help everybody prioritize. Like, what is the bad shit, right?
Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. For what purpose?
Hey, I really appreciate you guys. That shit, man. It's been almost an hour and a half, and I've kept 200 of you hanging out with me and Tom. And holy crap, it's been great. I might have to finish this up, like do the other half, because this has been an hour and 12 minutes we've been watching this thing. And there's another 3 hours to this. But you know what? Let me fast forward to the end of this real quick, because this is something I really wanted to show about the parliamentary procedure, how when they come to the end of this and decide, because there's still a lot of argument back and forth, and I don't have enough beer to sit here for all that process, not just, but I do got to tend to the family. So let me see if I can find this part real quick for you guys. All right, check this out. This is when they vote. This is at the end of the 3 hours of fucking debate.
Aye.
4 hours.
Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the bill is reported favorably.
Request the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are being requested, Jamie.
A recorded vote has been requested, and the clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Nadler. Aye. Mr. Nadler votes aye. Ms. Lofgren.
Aye.
Ms. Lofgren votes aye. Ms. Jackson Lee.
Aye.
Ms. Jackson Lee votes aye. Mr. Cohen.
Aye.
Mr. Cohen votes aye. Mr. Johnson, Georgia.
Aye.
Mr. Johnson, Georgia votes aye. Mr. Deutsch. Ms. Bass.
What's the link for the committee?
Aye.
It starts half hour
Mr.
into it.
Jeffries?
No, let's look right now.
No.
Mr. Cicilline?
I vote aye, and Mr. Deutsch is here as well.
Mr. Deutsch?
Aye.
Mr. Deutsch votes aye. Mr. Swalwell?
Aye.
Mr. Swalwell votes aye. Mr. Liu?
Aye.
Mr. Liu votes aye.
Well,
Mr. Raskin?
I mean, don't,
Aye.
I mean, from what we see
Mr.
now,
Raskin votes aye.
I mean, don't you
Ms.
think it's
Jayapal?
ratcheted up so high that
Aye.
Will members please mute?
some of the Republicans are,
Ms.
Jayapal
Jayapal
votes
votes
aye.
aye.
we gotta do something about
Ms.
that.
Stimmings?
You'll find a lot of
Aye.
boomer issues in tech.
Ms. Stimmings votes aye.
Madam Chair, I'm having difficulty with the
Yeah.
noise. Somebody needs to.
As we
mute.
are, would please members mute unless you are called upon?
Madam Chairman, I think it's Mr. Tiffany.
Mr. Correa?
Aye.
Mr. Correa votes aye.
Representative Tiffany, perhaps you could mute?
Ms. Scanlon?
Aye.
Ms. Scanlon votes aye. Ms. Garcia?
Aye.
Ms. Garcia votes aye. Mr. Neguse?
Aye.
Mr. Neguse votes aye. Ms. McBath?
Aye.
Ms. McBath votes aye. Mr. Stanton?
Aye.
Mr. Stanton votes aye. Ms. Dean?
Aye.
Ms. Dean votes aye. Ms. Escobar?
Aye.
Ms. Escobar votes aye. Mr. Jones? Ms. Ross?
Ross votes aye.
Ms. Ross votes aye. Ms. Bush? Mr. Jordan? Mr. Jordan votes no. Mr. Shabbat?
No.
Mr. Shabbat votes no. Mr. Gomert?
Gomer votes no.
Mr. Gomert votes no. Mr. Isa?
No.
Mr. Isa votes no. Mr. Buck? Mr. Gates?
Aye.
Mr. Gates votes aye. Mr. Johnson of Louisiana? Mr. Johnson of Louisiana votes no. Mr. Biggs?
No.
Mr. Biggs votes no. Mr. McClintock?
Aye.
Mr. McClintock votes aye. Mr. Stube? Mr. Tiffany?
Aye.
Mr. Tiffany votes aye. Mr. Massey?
No.
Mr. Massey votes no. Mr. Roy?
No.
Mr. Roy votes no. Mr. Bishop? Mr. Bishop votes no. Ms. Fishbach?
No.
Ms. Fishbach votes no. Ms. Sparts?
No.
Ms. Sparts votes no. Mr. Fitzgerald? Mr. Fitzgerald votes no. Mr. Benz? Mr. Benz votes no. Mr. Owens?
No.
Mr. Owens votes no. Mr. Biggs, you recorded as no.
Yeah, Miss Farts, you heard that right.
How am I recorded? Bass?
Ms. Bass, you were not recorded.
Aye.
Ms. Bass votes aye.
Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Mr. Jones, you were not recorded.
Aye.
Mr. Jones votes aye.
Madam Chairman, how am I, or Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Mr. Tiffany, you're recorded as aye.
I would like to be recorded as no.
Mr. Tiffany votes no.
Mr. Chairman, how am I recorded?
Mr. Jeffries, you are not recorded.
Mr. Jeffries votes aye.
Mr. Jeffries votes aye.
What up, Chris?
Are there any other members who haven't been recorded who wish to be recorded? Clerk will report.
Mr. Chairman, there are 26 ayes and 15 noes.
The
Thanks, man.
The ayes have it, and the bill is amended, is ordered reported favorably to the House. Members will have 2 days to submit views. Without objection, the bill will be reported as a single amendment in nature of a substitute, incorporating all adopted amendments, and staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes. Pursuant to notice, I now call up H.R. 2116.
And just like that, on the boner pills, or whatever the next topic is by the House to go over with in the Senate. Again, we only went over an hour and a half of in a 5-hour debate, and there's so much more to be mad or embrace, but a lot of it to me is just wasting our time. There's always a predetermined what the outcome is going to be, and the people who voted no, be a single issue voter. Vote those people out so we can actually have real change. All right, man. Catch you guys Wednesday, and thanks for hanging. Peace.